Welcome, everyone. This is Sarah Hutchinson from Yoga Beyond the Poses and Dr. Brad Rachman. We are back for our second segment in our, I guess we didn't even name this, did we? Our Detox education series. That sounds so in service. You can tell we both come out of formal in medical environments. Really, this is an opportunity that Dr. Brad and I have been looking for quite some time to speak to the time-honored practice of detoxification and cleansing, to bring the science in for you as modern people, to encourage you to consider this practice in order to have a vibrant health span, a word we defined in the first segment, not just lifespan, not just live long, but live long and prosper. Live long as a healthy person, a prosperous person, and I don't mean money. That could be there too. This is one of the ways to improve your health span. It is also one of the ways to be more comfortable in your body if you suffer from aches and pains, inflammation. This detox is for you. If you have a lot of brain fog and feel mentally less sharp than you know you can be, this could also be a result of toxins in your system. It's a long list of things that may show up when it's time to detox. So that's why we're here. We're going to spend 30 minutes with this. Dr. Brad will spend his time talking about the why. Why would we do this practice? I'm the how person because I then offer a program that allows you to come into a virtual community that is detoxing the body and the mind, practicing things like deep rest, daily detoxification practices for your body. These are not fancy things. These are kitchen and bathroom wisdom. Again, time-honored, scientifically backed, so that we can feel the way we know we want to feel, and in many cases must feel in order to make our lives work. Without further ado, from, I call it Jolly Beach. Is it Holly Beach?
It is Folly Beach.
It's Folly Beach, South Carolina.
Folly Beach. Oh, I like that.
I'm broadcasting from Western Colorado. Dr. Brad is in
Folly Beach, South Carolina.
Jolly Folly Beach,
Jolly Folly,
South Carolina. And we are siblings by another mother. Dr. Brad is my personal healer physician guy. And so I have personal experience with what it is he is going to offer to you, Dr. Brad.
Thank you. And we covered a lot of ground the last time that we all spoke. So looking backwards briefly, we figured out the world actually causes us to accumulate more toxins than we can imagine, even if we're leading a clean lifestyle. And our body really isn't equipped. It just doesn't have the mechanisms to keep up with this sheer number of toxins that are coming at us. More than that, the types of toxins and the way they affect different areas of our body doesn't have the systems to clean that up. And I raised a question at the very end, which is how do you figure out how toxic you are? If you can't feel it except when a symptom eventually comes about, how can you do this? One simple way, and I will tell you that I think it is extraordinarily effective, is to use a questionnaire. And Sarah has access to the exact questionnaire that I use with patients across a number of areas of the body. And when you score this questionnaire yourself and you get an answer, you can find out just how toxic you are by a very simple mathematical calculation. Now, you'd think it's not very accurate. It's extraordinarily accurate. But there also is urine testing. If you partner with a functional medicine physician, blood testing can give you some indication of how well your detoxification mechanisms are actually working. And there's profiles that help us to look and score this. The most important thing is, like, what is the principle? Not what's the technique, but the principle of getting rid of toxins from the body. And for me, it comes down to two things. It's the difference in cleansing and detox. And Sarah, you touched on this the last time, but essentially it's the difference between having a cleanse is like having somebody come in and do a really thorough cleanup of your house once and leaving everything on the floor in the very center and sweeping everything to the center. While detoxification is installing a Roomba automated robot vacuum cleaner system that day after day, 24/7, is effectively scavenging and helping your body to rid itself of these toxins. Now, there are a gazillion plans out there. There's juice fasting and diuretics and the salads and all different liquid only approaches. Um, these need to have a principle behind them. There's a reason for why these things are used. Detoxification is 100% different than cleansing. Cleansing is needed. Cleansing is mobilizing toxins out of the different tissues that they're in. But once the toxins are mobilized, once you've started to sweep all the stuff to the center of the room, somebody in the body's got to identify, oh, these are toxins. They have to transform them into something that can be eliminated. Remember, we spoke about 5 organs of elimination: liver, the lungs, the skin, the urinary tract, and the bowel. They have to sift that out and then push it on its way out. And unfortunately, colonics and juice fasting and these techniques, and the a really famous one is called the master cleanse, where you put some spicy cayenne with some lemon and some sweetener, and you just sip on that, like gallons and gallons of it for several days. Essentially, that is only mobilizing toxins. It's not a bad thing. It can work, but it doesn't identify, transform, and eliminate. So it's
So
equivalent to
I
all
just
that.
want to pause for a minute here because it's so brilliant and you're speaking to it with such precision. And I just want to slow it down for a moment because I know many of us have used the master cleanse over the years. Many of us have done other approaches. This doesn't make it wrong. You didn't hurt yourself. It's not bad. But we're living in this time where science and the ability to measure things and understand things is exponentially growing. You and I grew up with landlines. Remember, you had the long cord, and if you wanted to talk to your friend, you stretched the cord we had a broom closet that I used to go in and curl up and talk to my friends. And eventually that cord just got so stretched out. And now we are living in this amplified time where technology is evolving so quickly, and this is true in medicine and healing. We can see and understand and innovate so much more. So am I right, Dr. Rachman, in noticing that what you are offering for an explanation here is right at the edge of this emergent understanding that we haven't misunderstood in the past? We just now have a cell phone instead of a landline.
This is technology evolved in the last 4 decades. And the principle of mobilization of toxins has been around forever. That's the ancient wisdom, and there's ways of doing it very effectively.
The ghee in Ayurveda. And again, in our first segment,
Yeah.
I
Yes.
spoke about Ayurvedic cleansing and how I've transitioned into detoxification while honoring the Ayurvedic principles. So many of you who are deeply involved with Ayurveda will understand ghee as a carrier agent, which is why we might take in a lot of ghee in a traditional Ayurvedic cleanse so we can get that Roomba going, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And an advantage to moving a little bit deeper is that we don't retox. If you just mobilize and concentrate, it will leak back into the tissues potentially at a higher concentration. So what we really want to do is be effective at mobilization, but we want to ultimately get it into the bag and out of the house.
Yeah.
And that's the effective part that turns a cleanse into a more comprehensive detoxification. And our liver has a couple phases associated of activity. These are not physical phases. These are biochemical. There's pathways in chemistry and a chemistry set in your liver doing all these things. But 2 basic things it does is it cleanses, which is called phase 1, and then it packages, which is called phase 2. And it's critical that every one of these phases is working appropriately, or else we can't eliminate through the kidneys and urine and gallbladder, bile, and stool.
Well, this is why back in the day with Ayurvedic cleansing that was not included in the detox, I felt better but not complete.
I think that's exactly right. And what's interesting is if you do a really good detox, 10 days is usually sufficient to make incredible headway if it's done well. And For me, it's about paying attention to all of these elements. We use something called a modified protein sparing diet. Proteins are used to transform and eliminate and identify. So if we deny the liver the very proteins that they need in order to detoxify, we will cleanse, but we will not detoxify. So we try to not lose protein in the body anywhere. We reduce some calories because that helps to dig into the fat. We reduce complexity, making foods really simple. The elements that I'm helping to guide in this program involve some supplementation that makes like a detoxy smoothie kind of thing that is, you'll see in a moment, essential, and careful reintroduction of foods. So basically it burns fat and it spares organs. Most people during a cleanse have some degree of organ loss, believe it or not. This is protein sparing, and therefore it's muscle and organ sparing. And it promotes healthy identification and transformation and elimination on the
Brad,
body.
let me ask you this, because this is very popular in culture right now, this idea of a fatty liver. Is this have some bearing on what you're currently pointing
It
towards?
does, because when the body doesn't know what to do with something, it'll bind it to fat and stick it in, of all places, the liver.
Oh, like it's knocking at the door to get detoxified, but because it can't, it's out in a storage unit called fat.
100%. 100%. And then what you're left with is a liver that's filled with toxic fat, which doesn't sound good. And we have a whole disease in the United States now that is affecting millions of people called NASH, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which basically means a fatty liver. That's not caused by alcoholism. It's caused by toxicity.
So this kind of detoxification process that you're pointing us towards and that I'm going to be offering to the people who are interested is preventative of this NASH thing, part of the
100%.
prevention of it.
Prevents it, and it starts the reclaiming of the old fats and toxins and the moving of them out of the liver.
Okay.
So we do modified protein sparing as part of this specific food lists. And we then eliminate some things. As you go through the program, there's elimination that occurs. You get tighter and tighter until about the middle of this. I call it the hard couple days, where essentially you're really ridding the body of everything but that which is most simple. And the last day, 8, 9, 10, you're bringing things back in occasionally. And what you do at that point is apply. It's like you shampoo. You apply, lather, rinse, and repeat seasonally at that point.
Yeah. So you flew through those beautiful slides and this is part of the material that everybody who comes in to the detox with me will receive. I know for those of you watching, the slides came through quickly and you might have been wanting to notice. I'll just tell you, I just finished a 10-day detox because I wanted to do it before I offered it to you. And I also felt ready symptomatically. I felt inflammation. I felt brain fog. Many of you know I've just been through an enormous grief episode. I was ready to have more clarity and freedom around that. And there's an arc to this 10 days. You come in gradually. We'll come in very gradually. And then any arc, maybe we're going for a run and we're in the middle of it. And we'll then rise up with this simplification, the use of this particular plant-based smoothie that Dr. Brad's going to talk about. In the middle of the cleanse, the hard days, there are 3 of them where there's plenty to eat, but it's quite specific. It's going to be normal things that you have typically in your freezer and in your cupboards. You'll be doing the supplements as well. And then we'll ease back out of it because we all know that the coming out is critical. We don't want any kind of a rebound. So that's just a little bit about the how. And I want to just reiterate what we said earlier, which is if you've not done this before, it's easier than you think. And the outcome is so worth your effort.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Sarah.
That's okay. Here's the detox smoothie, which is what I just touched on.
That simplification of the diet produces the space, the environment for cleansing. Like you take stuff out, you can take stuff out. When you remove complexity from your diet, it creates a space that your body can use to fill with toxins. But it isn't itself the thing that removes the toxins from the body. That requires something more complicated. Now, I'm going to call it a detox smoothie, but the FDA calls it a medical food, which basically means it actually is natural, but it can do something important for the body. And it contains, the one that I have used for 40 years, contains a variety of necessary proteins and, more importantly, the amino acids that the body uses to bind toxins and remove them from the body. It contains the necessary vitamins that are important catalysts and cofactors that make detoxification go better. And it includes a variety of plant-based detoxifiers, ones that you may know of, like milk thistle, and some that you may never have heard before, like green tea catechins or sulforaphanes. You can clearly go to a health food store and get all these things, but I find that to be extraordinarily complicated. And you can put all this together in a particular protocol. And if you put it all together in one protocol that's easy and it's a powdered medical food, it's easy to make this work for these 10 days. I like being aware at the end of it that toxicity is just creating a stage, a clean stage, and you may want to slowly bring back foods afterwards, and you can experiment. It creates an opportunity for somebody at the end of the 10 days who really wants to experiment whether foods affect them mentally, emotionally, spiritually, to add back the foods more mindfully at that point. But there's an opportunity to use all of these elements that I'm sure, Sarah, you'll incorporate the ideas of a successful detox and the details of that for the people that would love your wise counsel for that. But essentially, a 10-day detox creates the opportunity to gather and to bind and eliminate successfully those things that have accumulated in your body that you no longer need.
They can be, again, physiological, emotional, energetic, spiritual, etc. And that's why in the how part, I include simple breath techniques that you may or may not yet know that will help also simplify and clear your nervous system of unwanted tension and stress. We have a big focus on deep rest. You can still carry on with your life, but you'll have an opportunity to practice with me some deep rest techniques. Again, nothing fancy. You do it lying on your floor with your own pillows and blankets, and many of you will already know some of these techniques. But what we're doing is we're simplifying and lightening our load while we're supporting the liver to do this critical job of this periodic cleanup that spares our organs from the wear and tear that literally, like you chop down a tree in the forest. I'm a nurse. It fells, people get felled, just like you chop down a tree in the forest. These strong, healthy people felled. You're like, what happened to that person? And often the roots of, and I'm not talking about accidents, I'm talking about people having illnesses at younger and younger ages that used to be confined to people who were quite old, who had accumulated over a lifetime and then were felled. But the felling is happening so much sooner. And when you watch the first segment of Dr. Rachman's and our conversation, you'll understand why, because he's very careful to delineate the world that we live in. And this is not a conspiracy theory, although it's sounding like one. With all the conveniences and all the things, we've paid a price. And so the felling of our health, the cutting down of that vital tree is happening, in my experience as a healthcare professional, at an earlier age. And Dr. Brad, you specialize to a certain extent in what are called unspecified illnesses, where people are sick and the doctor can't tell them what it is, or they're sick and they can't get better with what traditional medicine, conventional medicine is saying. They come to you. And as you said, I'll just tell this story. I came to Dr. Brad, age 60. I was losing energy. It didn't matter what I did. I was using all my tricks and toolboxes. And long story short, we can tell this another time, Dr. Brad found that I had metabolic syndrome, that I was pre-diabetic, which blew me away because that's the last thing I would consider myself to be. There's a genetic component. We'll talk about all this. I don't want to use up the time to talk about this. We went to work to get that axe away from that tree trunk. I did not wish to be felled by this, as I have seen other family member felled, and we didn't know what was going on. So the axe came away, and I was able to be put to rights because I'd been to my medical doctor. She pronounced me the healthiest 60-year-old she'd ever seen. After I worked with Dr. Rachman, I took my results from his testing to her, and she looked at it and she said, I'm simply not trained this way. He knows how to look under the hood. Doesn't make her bad or not smart enough. It matters what your training has been and how you understand health. So what you're getting here is this under the hood opportunity to detoxify your body in community with me, with some other people, with a bunch of other practices. Again, nothing fancy, nothing you can't do in your life, to make this an experience to, I don't know, restore your health, shore you up, get the axe out of the hands. We can talk about it in a variety of ways, but it is an absolute, to me, essential health practice. That was a good speech.
That's wonderful. Like that.
Yeah. This is nothing fancy. This is part of what I want people to know. People ask, am I going to be hungry? You might be hungry for the things you want to eat that are not included as we deepen into the 10 days. You may miss some of those things. You may not. But you will be eating, you'll be able to eat. This is not a fast. This is not, there's some calorie restriction by virtue of the foods that you are asked not to eat during the 10 days. It's just less calories, but there's still adequate food, and it can be quite beautifully prepared and delicious. The supplementation comes in chocolate, the detox smoothie you can get in chocolate. I want everybody to know that right up front. It has some stevia in it, some stevia, so it's got a sweetness to it. I find it punctuates my day of the foods that I am asked to eat beautifully and is quite filling for me. So that's my response about hunger. Can you go to work while you're doing this? Depends on your work. If you can lighten your load as much as possible during this 10 days, remember we're looking for simplification and a decrease in demand so that the body can do this deep work. So as much, you can still go to work if you need to. I hope you're not working not 12-hour shifts on nights like I used to, because I wouldn't have wanted to do that. That would have been a little too much. We're not looking for that endocrine system to release stress hormones. We're looking to downregulate and have this deep detoxification happen. What else do people ask you, Brad?
They can exercise.
Let's talk about, that's such a good one.
Yeah. Exercise doesn't mean one thing, right? So it's always good to pay attention to your body. Most individuals feel like they can do whatever they are normally doing up until the kind of deep detox day 3, 4, 5. Yeah. And then they back down a little bit. Some people blow right through it and they felt no different. Some people say, look, I'm going to be intentional. I know that I can read my body. And they just basically either back down to something that is a little bit lighter, a little bit more gentle, a little bit more mindful, a little less vigorous, a little less outward. Then they shift back to their normal routine after those few days.
The other question I get is people who are taking other supplements and or prescription medications. Do you have a recommendation for those people?
10-day detox is such a short blip of time that it won't have any ramifications on these other areas. Of course, if they want to and feel comfortable talking to their clinicians about those things, I would encourage them to do it. However, 10 days is a blip.
So if I did,
there will not be collisions for something as short as 10 days.
So when I just did this 10 days, I did suspend most of my normal supplementation. And what you're saying is that my body likely did not notice that, because I wanted my body to devote itself to
I love
really
it if you're going to choose to do that. Yeah. And you and I have spoken about that for you, and all things are personalized, right? So I would imagine for someone else, it might be more important to keep the consistency due to whatever stage of their care that they're in.
Another inquiry that I get frequently, and it's a good one for us because we both have families. What if I'm doing this And I'm in a family system that is not. What are your thoughts about that?
Almost all of my patients are, in that situation. They are sharing food and sharing preparation with others. And the great thing about the diet is that you can still have food that is made for others, but you are self-selecting yourself into more narrow components of that. So while there may be 3, 4, or 5 components that are going out to your family, you may be staying in a more narrow range of 1 or 2.
It's not like you have to go in the other room to eat, or anybody's going to
Nope. And it
give
won't
you
be
a
that
hard
you're
time because you're
starving
eating
yourself
something you
in some
can't
way.
plan.
In fact, it'll probably look like you're having more fun than they are because you have these shakes and you have more intentional food. You won't be hungry. And uh, I think it will be less onerous, less of a burden, less contrived than you think it will be.
And for those of you who have concerns about caffeine, because it is a regular part of your intake, I understand that. And during the coming in phase, green tea, which has some caffeine in it, is definitely on your food list. During that 3-day depth period, I'm doing an arc, but it's actually this, right? Not because you're dipping, but because we're going deep into the simplicity and the stillness and the intuitive rise. During that time, I believe, am I right, Brad, that the green tea comes off during that time?
Yeah, it's better if we are not. Green tea has a property of creating more cleansing, right? And that's why it's great. But if you're in the binding phase where you're really in there and you're really trying to like bind stuff up that you've stirred up, a little better not to overstimulate it. There is enough green tea catechins in the actual medical food.
And I have found each time, even the first time I did this 10-day detox under your supervision, it's a big word, supervision, alongside you, when I came out, caffeine was not the first thing that I thought about. In fact, I had this beautiful spaciousness about choosing. My compulsion was gone. It wasn't gone. It was minimized. And I want to close by bringing in a little bit of an esoteric flavor to our conversation, which is, Dr. Rachman, you spoke about intention just briefly a little earlier. We'll come into this intentionally, individually and collectively. We'll really be coming in through a doorway, a portal, if you will, into a very intentional, and I would even say sacred time where we are honoring our bodies and our energetic selves by shaping our food intake, our media intake. I'm going to encourage you, support you in decreasing that. You don't have to, but that will be included. To come into this more rarefied space, like you're going on almost like a vacation where you go by yourself to a really beautiful place where it's quiet. There's very little distraction. There are simple foods and lots of time in nature. And you come out of that restored, renewed, with greater clarity. And that's the journey that we're going to go on. I do consider it sacred in many ways, a very specialized time to drop into my more essential nature, your more essential nature, to support our health span. With all the lovely science that goes into your food lists, your recipes, and these plant-based supplements that are so critical in completing the journey of the toxins in here being flushed. That was a great way to end, talking about flushing.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, anything else you'd like to add?
Just wish everyone such great success that chooses to move forward with this. I think I think the juice is worth the squeeze. Really do. That there are a variety of places that we can place our efforts health-wise. And this is the big one. It's a big lever. I wish everyone well, even those that are just considering doing it. And spend some time thinking carefully and give yourself a little push. I don't think you'll be sorry. I think that you will be delighted at how your body feels.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the plan. I am putting in the chat, again, we're not doing a big commercial thing here. You have now met Dr. Brad Rachman in Jolly Folly Beach, South Carolina. Brad and I have never met in the flesh, although we've been working together for almost 10 years.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm turning 70 and I came to you, I believe, when I was 6. We have yet to meet in the flesh, but it doesn't seem to matter because we do the virtual thing. I know that you work with people likely all over the planet virtually.
I do.
Your
All over the
specialty, your specialty is functional medicine. Again, my favorite scientist and healer, Dr. Brad Rachman. You can find him at rachmanclinic.com. It's in the chat if you want to have a look at that. You can also just loop back to me and I can connect you to Dr. Rachman. There's so much more to say, but that will wait for another time. In the meantime, this is all about you, our community, who have been motivated in whatever way to come to this next level of supporting your health and your deepest wellness. So thank you for your attention, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.